Hey guys, it's Lauren, and welcome back to the Pod Fathers podcast. Today I am with Grace and Lindsay, and we are going to be talking about ex-Mafia members in the media. Let's go to a coffee shop. It's a little rainy.
Right.
We've spent the semester diving into the personas of former mobsters turned into influencers. Today we're asking, are these guys genuinely reformed or just profiting off their past? Let's start with Joey Molino, aka Skinny Joey. Who is he and what's his deal online?
Skinny Joey was the flashy young face of the Philly mob in the 90s. Think designer suits, club life, and front page headlines. But behind the style was some serious substance. He wasn't just a mad mascot, he was really running things. Joey was considered the head of the Philadelphia crime family, and he was known for shaking up the old school mafia vibe. He was more public, more proactive, and honestly kind of a celebrity in the crime world.
Wait, didn't he end up in jail?
Oh yeah, multiple times. His big conviction came in 2001 when he was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison on racketeering charges. These charges included extortion, illegal gambling, and dealing drugs. The FBI built a pretty big case around him, but undercover agents and informants were always after him, and some of whom he later always referenced in his podcast to rats, which comes up all the time.
Oh wow, so it's not just rumors and he's actually been convicted of serious stuff.
What's interesting is that even though the government painted him as the boss of the Philly mob, he always denied everything. He has never admitted to being the head of the mafia, and till this day, he always avoids talking about his past in any serious way. Then in 2016, he got swept up in another big case, and this time it related to his illegal gambling, and he eventually just took a plea deal and served 2 years in prison. And after that, he moved to Florida, and that's kind of where his second act began. Less crime, more cigars, and now a podcast called The Skinny with Lil Snuff. So while he claims to be out of that life, it's pretty complicated. His podcast and public persona can lean very heavily on the mob mystique. But when it comes to talking about accountability, remorse, or actually being addressed for what he did, he always dodges everything.
They say after Nikki became the boss, they promoted your dad to the underboss.
I don't know nothing about that. That I'm not going to talk about. I don't want to talk about none of that.
You don't know anything.
I don't want to talk about none of the mob stuff. I want to talk about the rats.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, but is this genuine or just a way to stay famous and cash in?
It's a total rebrand. He doesn't really preach about change, but he's still profiting off his image. The podcast is monetized and merch is available, and his silence really adds a mysterious vibe. That's convenient redemption, not a real one. He has also just recently created his own Philly cheesesteak restaurant called Skinny Joey's Cheesecake. And it's not like he's just some guy enjoying his retirement. He's building a business empire around his name. And his name only has value because of his past in the mob.
That Skinny Joey unseated the then reputed crime boss, John Stanfa. After serving time in prison for convictions including racketeering, extortion, and bookmaking, Merlino is now opening the first of what he hopes will be a massive cheesesteak franchise.
Philly loves a good comeback.
And here's the wild part. If you look up on TikTok and Instagram, the hashtags are things like hashtag mob life, hashtag no rats, and hashtag omerta. Like, the whole mafia vibe is still totally a part of his brand, and he doesn't say a lot, but is that silent still? It kind of speaks for itself, and it's all mystique, no accountability.
So basically, no remorse, no giving back, no real redemption.
Exactly. There's no sign of him doing charity work, no interviews where he reflects and says he's changed, nothing like that. Honestly, it feels kind of calculated, like it's a makeover, but only on the outside. I'd call it a fictional redemption. He cleaned up the image, sure, but didn't really change the story.
Got it. So it's more like rebranding than reform.
Totally.
All right, we're going to switch gears, and I'm going to ask Grace some questions about her mobster, but I think that we should change locations.
Let's take this outside.
Grace, talk to me a little bit about your mobster. Is he shown growth at all, or is he just capitalizing off of his past like everyone else?
Well, that's up to interpretation. I looked into Frank Culotta, a former mobster turned government witness. He was a member of the Chicago outfit and an associate of infamous Tony Spilotro.
What was Frank's position in the Mafia? What's your take on him? Was he the real deal?
Oh, absolutely. Frank was knee-deep in the criminal life. He was involved in robberies, extortions, and even confessed to murder.
So why did he flip? What made him go from a big-time mobster to a government rat?
In 1981, the Hole in the Wall gang, Frank's gang, attempted to burglarize a high-end store in Vegas. The robbery was a bust. The FBI had an informant working inside the gang named Sal Romano. Sal set up the gang and they were taken into custody. Although Frank wasn't at the scene of the crime, he was leading the gang with Tony Spilotro. Once his crew was arrested, Frank started getting nervous. Then the FBI showed Frank a wiretap of Tony Spilotro saying that Frank needed to be killed. At this point, Frank was feeling the heat from both the government and his gang. So he flipped. Frank turned informant. Frank helped take down some serious people.
So Frank testified, entered the witness protection program, and eventually started talking publicly about his past. Do you think he recently changed, or was he just cashing in?
That's a tough one. Frank changed his avenues of making money, but it's hard to say if he truly reformed. Once he turned informant, he stopped committing crimes, but I wouldn't go as far to say that he was an improved man.
Does Frank condemn his past when he talks about his story?
Not so much. Frank has said that he didn't want to glamorize that life, but the line between confession and glorification is blurry. Frank doesn't seem to show any remorse. In an interview he did with Vlad TV, he almost seemed proud of his past. He cracks jokes about his hits and his heists.
So is Frank just a retired outlaw enjoying the limelight?
I think that's most likely the case. Frank grew up around crime and was socialized to admire criminals. It's all he ever knew. Condemning his past would be like abandoning his worldview. I don't know if he's capable of that.
So did he have any remorse?
And at that point, you decided to actually cooperate.
Yes, I did. It was very difficult to do that because I was raised another way. It was like selling my soul to the devil, and I didn't want to do that. And I just couldn't believe that my best friend was trying to save his life and sacrifice mine, let me get killed. So I told the FBI agent.
I think Culotta has survival instinct. It seems like he regretted the consequences of his actions more than the actual actions. But he was human. When he talked about people that he hurt, you could tell that there was some weight there. Maybe not full remorse, but he doesn't seem to have a clear conscience either.
So how did he capitalize his fame?
Well, one of Frank's biggest accomplishments was working as a consultant on Martin Scorsese's 1995 film Casino. The character Frank Marino was based off of Culotta, and Culotta served as a technical advisor and even had a cameo as a hitman in the film. Frank boasts about his contribution to the movie and says the film was Scorsese's best film because of him. He also co-authored several books, gave a ton of interviews, and started doing Q&A style YouTube videos, and even mob museum tours in Vegas.
So it sounds like he lived quite the life after the downfall of his gang.
Oh, absolutely. He was not shy about his success and was known to promote his tours and books any chance he got.
Gotcha. Well, Frank, I definitely appreciate you coming in and telling your story.
I'm on YouTube. Buy this cup. This is my cup, all right? And I always say prescribe. I know it means subscribe. This is what I put on the back. Although you'll be able to put anything you want on the back of the cups. It's a sort of a good likeness of me, isn't it? I'm a handsome devil.
If Frank was still alive today, what do you think he would say about that?
Honestly, I think he would lean into it even more. He'd probably say something like, hey, I lived through it, why not profit from it? He knew people were fascinated by the mob, and he wasn't afraid to give them what they wanted for a price. I don't think he saw it as exploitation. To him, it was just good business.
Well, there you have it, folks. Frank Culotta, mobster, informant, storyteller. Reformed? Probably not. Retired? Definitely. But the shadows he came from, they never really go away. Why do you think people are so fascinated with mobsters? Why is it that these former gang members are able to capitalize off their past in the way they do?
I feel like it's a mix of power and rebellion. They break the rules and always live big, and then if they survive, they get to tell the story.
Yeah. Plus, there's the element of charisma. Culotta and Joey both had it. It's unsettling, but it draws people in.
Do you think it would have been possible for guys like Culotta or Joey to make this kind of comeback if they'd been active today, like in the social media age?
honestly, maybe even easier. They wouldn't have needed Hollywood. Culotta could have had his claim to fame without Scorsese's help. Apps like TikTok could have given Culotta a big platform.
So what did we learn today? Whether it's Joey Morlino lighting cigars in Florida or Frank Culotta guiding tourists through his old haunts, one thing's clear: redemption and rebranding aren't always the same thing. These men built empires on fear and crime, and now they're building brands on nostalgia and intrigue. Some might say they've changed, others might say they changed platforms. But maybe the bigger question isn't have they changed? It's why we keep watching, because at the end of the day, we're not just consuming their content, we're keeping the legend alive. Thanks for listening to Podfathers, Redemption or Rebrand. We'll catch you next time, same Mob channel.